Hello again, and welcome to what may be the best second part of any program that we've ever done at Channel 49. A week ago, we visited with you over the restoration project, the ongoing iconography project at St. George Greek Orthodox Church here in Fresno. We have a panel here to join us again. Bob Sexton, who was on the committee that for 10 years worked on this project. Across from him, his wife Helen, lifelong members of the parish, and seeing this art come to life only gives them more joy at their parish of choice. And across from me, Chris Rockas, baptized there and seeing now probably the most beautiful time of what the church has looked like ever in his lifetime. We want to thank you for being on that committee and for being here today to share your insights into what we're going to look at in the second program. I'd like to begin, though, with our good friend George Gianapulos, who was the chair of that committee that spent all those years evaluating all the different offers to do the art. I asked him how things progressed once they had landed their commissioned artists, Valery and his wife Larissa.
The agreement that we made with Valery was to for him to produce certain products from which we could make some judgments as to how we would proceed. Amongst them were sketches, an overall sketch of the design of the ceiling, individual sketches, and eventually scaled down color versions of the icons that would eventually be up there, and then finally full-size templates that would be used to transfer the figures to the ceiling. Upon completion of that, we had agreed also that we would come to St. Petersburg, examine those products, and if we were satisfied, and if the church as a result was satisfied, we would proceed. So a group of us went, saw the products, met with the artist, met with his family in this studio, saw these products, and decided that we had selected the right person. So the next step was to bring him here, and he and his family, and prepare this sanctuary for the work that was going to be done.
Let's go back again to the time that you were both there in St. Petersburg. We talked about it a little bit last week, but for those that weren't there, what would be one more memory or an insight that just reminds you just how significant this artist and his wife were going to be for you?
There is a painting that Larissa did as a graduate study in their studio, and it's mounted up above, and it's really a very large canvas. I would say maybe 15 feet by 10 feet high, and it's a hunting scene, a Russian hunting scene, and it's just I spent half my time there trying to figure out how I could get that and bring it home. It was beautiful. An amazing piece of work.
Helen.
Yes, in addition to the one that Bob has spoken about, they had also a number of their paintings, because they're artists after all, and that's how they make their living. We were very, very impressed. And of course, we were very impressed with the quality of the work that he had done already for the renderings that were going to be brought back to Fresno to be on the ceiling of St. George's Church. Of course, the whole city of St. Petersburg is such a wonderful artistic city. Besides the Hermitage, besides the Pirogov, which is just a little ways off, the cathedrals over there are absolutely amazing. They're enormous. Their iconostasis are 3 or 4 levels of icons. They're up 100 meters or more tall, over 300 feet tall. Beautiful their iconography is beautiful. the Church of the Resurrection of Christ on spilled blood is done all in mosaics. You have to really go very closely to see that is mosaic. It looks like paintings. So I know Valery and Larissa were inspired by that kind of work, and that has shown it to the work that they have done so far for us. And it's absolutely beautiful.
Now, one thing that came to mind to me is something like Michelangelo and something like Pope Julius II. So I actually asked Father Jim if he felt a little bit like that when he was commissioning Valery on his project. Let's see what Father Jim said.
I have to tell you, between George and I, we would ask him often, how long? And as Michelangelo told the Pope, it'll be done when it's done. He never quite said that to us, but that's pretty much the comments we would get. Oh, big job. We would get big job, big job.
You know, that's nice that it was a big job, and it's still going on. This is like an ongoing labor of love. But let's hear from Valery, because one thing is to hear an artist and not just see his work, but see the philosophy that's underneath it. Let's hear when I asked him what he hoped to achieve and the difficulties that he and Larissa encountered in trying to bring this all to fruition.
This is a draft for the main painting for the church ceiling. I've done this work in a style of the Russian Orthodox tradition.
В традициях русской живописи должен был...
The main goal of this type of church painting is to bring modern man closer to understand spiritual images. Because ancient icons can carry in themselves deep spiritual meaning, but not everyone can comprehend it. Painting icons is not simple. To be able to learn from the ancient painters, the artist himself should be a spiritual person. It's really hard, but at the same time, painting icons is a very fascinating profession. The hardest part of this project was to fit the dome painting into St. George's Church structure. There are some prominent architectural rhythms and elements, somewhat reminiscent of Noah's Ark, which need to be incorporated together. It took us forever to finish this project, but the works of the old-school masters helped us immensely. Up there, I had no space to do my painting. I was forced to come down all the time and use my laser pointer to correct all my mistakes. It was really hot in the summer, so I had to come down all the time for water and to rest. It was extremely hard to breathe up there, and that caused me many headaches. It was really hard work, but I could not be more pleased with my results.
I loved meeting Valery, and I loved meeting Larissa when we went over there. But I really am wondering, from your point of view, what would be the effect that all of this had on the parishioners? So let's hear Father Jim first, and then George, but then I'd love to hear your personal reflections as to what it is seeing this in your church. Let's hear Father Jim.
The community welcomed it well. They supported it financially. They supported it with their time. Don't forget that we had over 3 years with scaffolding in the church, and we worshiped in here with the scaffolding in the church. And people got a little tired of having that element there. But when all the scaffolding came down and people walked in here, the gasps and the tears, and some who couldn't quite see it completed because they were seeing sections only, when it was all unveiled, they said, "Oh, we get it now. We understand." it's cohesive. They finally saw it in its cohesion, and it was worth the wait for many people.
You know, I did ask George, who was really following this like a hawk as it was coming more and more year after year. So let's give George a chance to tell us his more detailed explanation of how it was appealing to people as it's coming to vision.
Valery was able to complete virtually the entire Pantocratora. That's that 10-foot figure of Jesus Christ up there in the center of the ceiling. Easter was approaching, Pascha for the Greek Orthodox. We were able to get the scaffold people here to remove some of the planks of that scaffold so that for the first time the Pantocratora would be revealed, and nobody bothered to look up until we celebrated the resurrection of Jesus Christ at midnight. And when the lights came on, everybody could look up and see for the first time the figure of Jesus Christ. Dramatic, and for the first time people saw what we're really doing up there. After that, it was sections and segments of the project. People who were up in the choir loft every Sunday chanting with the liturgy with Father Jim could see over those segments of the scaffold and see a progress. It was when we removed the forward section of that scaffold, and for the first time people saw an integrated view of two major sections of this, with all of the ornamentation, the angels, the figures of John over on one side and Luke on the other. Magnificent, totally overtaken by the color and the overall view that people were able to see. Little by little, the rear two sections were completed. Similarly, people were awed, and then finally we removed the last section just this last August, and everybody could see the entire integrated 70-foot by 45-foot panorama of artwork produced by Valery Butyrsky.
Before we take our break, I wonder if each one of you could just give one personal feeling or emotion or sense that comes to you at seeing this as it finally all made sense.
Well, it was dramatic. It was dramatic to see the people coming to view it when the church was open. They would step in the door, look around, and then look up, and it would be just every time, an amazing effect. It's that same wow factor I felt in St. Petersburg.
Wow. Helen.
I want to speak about the hardship of going through the 3.5 years with the scaffolding. It was hard. Our own daughter was getting married, and that was at the very beginning of the project. There was tarp and dust all over the pews. The scaffolding was on. We could not have the wedding inside the church. But fortunately, we have a beautiful rose garden on the side of the church, and we had to get special permission from our metropolitan to hold the wedding outside the church. It turned out beautifully, but several other people who had weddings and baptisms have to go through that awkward moments where they couldn't have the wedding there because of the scaffolding and everything else.
Chris.
Following what Helen said, I would have, being a past president of the Greek community of Fresno at St. George Greek Orthodox Church, people would come to me thinking I had power to get this thing done.
You don't have power.
I don't have any power. And I would say, give it time. Matter of fact, Valery and his family come to church quite often, and Valery at one time was in the front pew. I tapped him on his back. I said, "Hey, Valery, when are you going to finish this?" And all he said to me was, "I finish when I finish." But then he finished, and it was just like a sunburst to see the entire roof, the ceiling of the church completed. It was awesome, believe me.
We have to take a break right now, but please do come back because we have one more half of a program to share about St. George Greek Orthodox Church. We'll be right back.
For over 25 years, KNXT has been serving the people of the San Joaquin Valley with good family television that's just not available anywhere else. It's important for you, the viewer, to help support this valuable tool of ministry. KNXT needs to continue to grow and bring you important programming about your faith. But sometimes it's hard to stop and find the time. Make it easy. Go to knxt.tv and find out how easy it is to support your Catholic television station, KNXT TV.
Welcome back to what's been for me just the most interesting program to host and to help co-produce. I really want to thank at this point Ruslan, who is our wonderful Russian filmer, videographer, and also editor of all the artwork that you've seen. So we want to thank Ruslan for all the special effort he put in to make this a magnificent artistic enjoyment for all of us here. Even those that have seen the work at their church are amazed at seeing the beauty of the way it's being presented here for you. Now, we did want to ask Father Jim the question that's on everybody's mind. We have the reaction of the Greek community, obviously, but then there'd be all of us who are not worshiping at St. George's. What has been our reaction? And let's hear Father Jim tell what it's like hosting a visit to his beautiful church.
Their response has been remarkable. We unveiled the entire thing 2 days before our food festival this year. And people from the outside who are not even in touch with our traditions of this art form walked in, and some of them just burst into tears because they had never truly experienced anything like this, especially in the Western Hemisphere. This is something you find in Europe. It's not something necessarily you find over here. And we have many beautiful churches in America, don't get me wrong. Some lovely, lovely churches. But to this scale and to this scope with the amount of art form in here, and what we try to create for our people, whether they're part of our community or not, is to be able to step out of the world into heaven on earth, to leave the cares of the world outside and to be able to sit in the presence of God in His kingdom. And that's the whole idea of iconography. We say that we are surrounded by the cloud of witnesses, and these are windows to heaven. And we're not worshiping anything you see on these walls, but if we can bring God down in a real sense, in a spiritual sense, in a holy sense, we do that in the Eastern Orthodox tradition. And so it's true to watch the faces and the expressions of the people coming through here during the food festival, which is the biggest fundraiser we have, as you know, for the last 50 years here in Fresno, was just remarkable. To have them come in and sit down, and some of them actually laid down so that they could just look up after they looked forward, then it was like, can I just lay on the pew a minute and just gather what I'm seeing? And saying that they walked out of here with a wonderful sense of God, with a sense of His love. We also create our churches to where He's reaching down and we can reach up and we can feel His full embrace. There's so much psychology, and when you talk about the word psychology, it comes from the Greek word of the study of the soul, or the word actually, in actuality, it means the word of the soul. So the soul speaks, and the soul itself was enlivened by what people saw. And people who had even misunderstandings as to the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church walked in here, and just the artwork itself said something to them, and it brought questions that they could have answers, and they got their answers. Some even said, "We didn't realize you were so Christian." Well, that's okay for me. Anything that I can do to bring about an understanding of our Lord and Savior is good enough for me.
I wonder if any of you have had that experience with non-Greek friends. Did any of you host a little visit to your beautiful church with anyone?
You were the Dawson at the food festival.
That's true, and I mentioned
Yes,
that before.
yeah.
That impression that you would see every time people come in, and I had friends come there too, and they were just absolutely blown away by it. It is a dramatic effect.
I know I went there the same time of the food festival, and it was It was mind expanding. It was, I have seen some magnificent Catholic churches, but I think the Orthodox have it all over us. I'm sorry. It's magnificent, it's spiritual, it's enlightening, and it's very, very enriching, just the art. And then to know that the faith behind it all is very, very great. Now, I did ask my good friend George Gianapulos to kind of like focus on particular things that he really enjoys. Being an artist, he has a real eye for things. I asked him what were some of the techniques that Valery and Larissa used, and what were some of the finished pieces of this ongoing project that he really finds gripping. So let's hear George, and then let our panel join in.
There was a technique that he used to embellish what we see up there on the ceiling. Very subtle, but it's there. Of course, everything that he's done is on a flat, smooth surface, but he applied a technique that applied paint in a particular manner that makes the flat, even surface now look like mosaic. And you can see that throughout this panorama of color and iconography. There's one other thing I would bring people the attention of people to, and that is the expressions on those figures up there. Each one has a unique expression on his face, and I marvel at that. I can study the prophet Elias back there, Isaiah sitting there looking sternly at us, and of course Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Just a beautiful work, and demonstrates the skill and the artistic ability of this artist. He is really a master.
You know, George mentioned the expressions, looking at the expressions. Isaiah struck me particularly, this very, he said, stern look. What I really felt, especially when I saw the sketch the first time, was he is looking at you and saying, pay attention, someone is coming. And it gets back to the first thing that I saw in Valery's work is a treatment of the eyes. I want people, when they go to see this, to pay particular attention to the eyes. There is just something exceptional about it. I mean, in Byzantine iconography in general, there are very specific ways of handling those things. But this goes beyond that. It was a remarkable thing, and it is, I have never forgotten the effect it had on me.
You know, a remarkable thing is that we are going to see now our 14th clip of these two programs. It's our last one that we're going to be able to show you. It's to the answer of the question to Father Jim, how is it that Valery and Larissa and their family are adapting to living here? And what are the gifts that you have known that they have brought to us by just their physical presence among us? Because they have been so enriching to the community. Let's hear Father Jim, and let's look at the beautiful family that has come to be among us now.
This became their church. This became their community. And the people received them very, very well. And they decided that they like it here enough that this is going to be home base. At least for now, they can't see anywhere else they're going to go. I kind of encourage them, if they really want to make a name for themselves, they may need to have to go to some of the more major cities to do that. But they are very happy where they are here, and they come from a major city in Russia. Beautiful, historic art. The Hermitage is there. I mean, it's just, you think about the Peter the Great and Catherine the Great and what they did to their civilization there to bring it into, they brought the European flair and touch to it. It was there, by the way, that I have to say that I realized that the iconography we had in this church was really part of the era of Peter the Great, and trying to, in essence, bring a Western feel to an Eastern tradition. And that's what we have here. And even in the Greek Orthodox Church, that permeated itself up and through the 1950s or so, and now the pendulum has swung back to a 11th to a 16th century Byzantine style in most of our churches that are being built today. So we're one of those last kickbacks to Peter the Great in what would that be, the 18th, 19th century tradition of iconography. But anyway, back to the iconographers. They've been embraced well here, and they know it. And so between our community and St. Peter's Serbian Church, where there's a lot of Russian immigrants down there, they tend to come back and forth. But they've always considered this to be their home. They've had 2 children since they've been here, and they named their second child George because he was born here was part of this they were part of this community.
I just want to thank everyone who has been part of this fantastic project. Of course, the artists most of all, Valery and Larissa, their family, Father Jim Pappas, the pastor of St. George Greek Orthodox Church, George Gianapulos, who was helping us make this program, and finally our wonderful panel of Bob and Helen Sexton and Chris Rockas. We hope you enjoyed this and that you'll be back next week for another program here at Channel 49 KNXT. God bless.